the photos fail to foreshadow the finish.
Sunday I started crying, and I cried till Tuesday. I mean, it's just hard.
The text to Mom reveals so much more. Somewhere I lost my fight. I'm trying to find it again. I just needed to get away from me, but I was always there.
She really tried. She tried to get better.
From nurse on college scholarship to patient at treatment centers, Tommy Lilpop was one of 2 drug overdose deaths the same night at the Greenwood Red Carpet Inn. Police told her mother that her boyfriend continued doing drugs for days next to Tommy's decomposing body.
So she was cremated without me ever seeing her.
Kathy Lowe begged police to file homicide charges against the repeat offending dealer who could be traced through Tommy's phone.
He kept trying to tell me that there was no such charge in Indiana for dealing a controlled substance that results in a death. And then got mad at me because I said, well, yes, there is. It's Indiana Code 3542-1-1.5. And he got mad, and he started screaming at me that my daughter was just a drug addict, that he didn't have to do nothing for me, and he certainly didn't have to do nothing for her.
Same kind of story for the mother of Robert Gibson, who died of a drug overdose. Too afraid to do an interview, she insists the people who sold her son the fatal dose are still dealing drugs at 27th and Slevin in Louisville. She says she couldn't get police to do anything about it, so she called me. I went undercover and recorded as many as 10 people per hour on bikes or on foot, going in, spending a few minutes inside, then coming out. And cars pulling up, waiting for this man to come out. Something happens through the window, and then cars take off, over and over. One of the people living here is Robert Smothers, charged in 2013 with trafficking marijuana and possessing cocaine. 2015, trafficking heroin and engaging in an organized criminal syndicate. 2017, trafficking methamphetamine. And in 2018, sentenced to 2.5 years in prison. I'm John Bull with Wave 3. Do you know a Robert Gibson? I went back to the house with a visible camera this time.
I'm going to be honest with you, okay? Yeah. Robbie was my friend.
Looks like to me a bunch of drug addicts.
I love
here,
Robbie.
Not anything
okay?
else.
And it hurt me bad, okay? He didn't get his drugs here.
Well, ain't nobody going to want to come here and get their drugs.
I like
because
Robert, man.
they ain't, we do drugs. We don't sell drugs.
You do drugs, you don't sell drugs?
Yes.
What drugs do you guys do?
It doesn't matter. It's none of your business.
You said you do drugs, so I'm just
But it's
following
none
up
of
with
your
a question.
business what we do.
I've also been watching the house here, undercover, just watching, and up to 10 people an hour coming and going, spending a couple minutes inside.
Is that wrong to have 10 people? It don't matter if we got 100 people a day coming to our house.
Turns out my camera wasn't the only one on this home.
See, this lady's had a camera facing our house because we've been harassed. Whatever,
Did they think the drug dealing's going on here too?
Well, drug dealing goes on, everywhere in Portland.
It appears to be a good time to sell drugs in Louisville. Data from LMPD shows a steady decline in all drug trafficking arrests since 2018. Cocaine, heroin, meth trafficking arrests, all plummeting each year. In fact, there hasn't been a first offense heroin dealing arrest for years.
Yeah. Have y'all ever thought about how the heroin and stuff gets down here? Because I've never went in a house and someone said, I'm making a batch of heroin today, okay? But we've got plenty of it down here.
The problem is I have to be able to show that it was your particular drug that precipitated that particular death.
This is the man in charge of the DEA's Louisville division, overseeing operations in 3 states. He says from April 2020 to April of 2021, there were 188 drug overdose deaths just in Louisville, an average of 1 every 2 days. He insists they are prosecuting overdose deaths as homicides. Since 2017, the DEA's heroin investigation team has reviewed 435 overdose cases, initiating 27 investigations and prosecuting 46 people.
Many of them, unfortunately, just the evidence isn't there. I mean, that's what it comes down to. These are criminal investigations and federal prosecutions. You have to have the evidence. It takes time to get it, and sometimes no matter what you do, it just isn't there.
Back at 27th and Slevin, they think police and prosecutors have their priorities messed up. They told her.
Arrest drug dealers, they give them life, and then the child molesters and all that, they get probation. You're allowed to rape kids, but don't sell drugs.
In July, I investigated a mother's complaint about the failure to charge anyone in the overdose death of her son or even crack down on the alleged drug house where she says he bought the heroin near 27th and Slevin. The house was still flourishing with what appeared to be drug activity when I secretly watched.
You know, we do drugs. We don't sell drugs.
You do drugs, you don't sell drugs.
Yes.
Then, on October 4th, a suspected drug overdose death in the same house at 311 North 27th. While nothing changed there, it did at an alleged drug house only 2 blocks away.
Whenever you would air a story, they would quit going to houses and then just start meeting on side streets in different vehicles. And it would be a drop and go.
So after I did that story on that 27th and Slevin,
Yes,
that changed the conduct on
Yes.
25th and Slevin.
yes.
How does this man know? He says a friend of his was making the 2-hour round-trip drives from their town to 25th and Slevin to get heroin every day. This was this person's daily routine for months, coming to Louisville like
I would
this?
say years.
Years.
Yes,
To the same dealer?
yes. Comfortable. Because addict, once they find a good product, they want to stick with it. Just like we do when we find a good restaurant, we want to keep going to that restaurant and get a good meal.
This is the restaurant, 2511 Slevin. Our informant, identity obscured for his protection, sent me pictures of the alleged dealer, his vehicle, and the home because he sometimes made the trip here with his friend for protection.
I brought them here because their mother was begging. If you don't take them, somebody else will, and they might not come home.
Were you ever scared when you were sitting there waiting?
Oh, many times. Every time. Not just many times, but every time. I'm from a small town, and you get a small town in a big city, there's so many eyes watching. I felt like there was 1,000 eyes watching my vehicle when I pull in. I would always lay my handgun in my lap in case somebody come up on me, bust my window or shoot whatever. Because I don't know what's going on around other gangs or other dealers or other, wanting to rob whatever. Because you got other addicts out there that are watching that house.
I was watching it too, undercover. The activity played out exactly as he described. A man in a blue pickup truck pulling up, sitting in the vehicle for sometimes hours at a time. The pickup driver gets out and escorts the people who walk up around the side of the house to a back door, and then they both emerge a couple of minutes later. Same routine, over and over, even in the cold rain. The home stays busy every time I watch, with people being dropped off by waiting cars, or coming and going by motorcycle, or by bicycle, undaunted by the police driving by as they're coming out.
And they would take me to the addresses. And they would go inside and come back out and be just, they'd already be high when they come back out. And then we'd get in the car and leave.
After watching and recording for a couple of weeks, I tried to interview the pickup driver in the middle of the routine. I'm John Bull with Wave 3. I'd like to could I ask you a couple questions?
I don't want to answer no questions.
I want to ask you about this drug operation that's running here on this house.
I don't know nothing about no drugs, man.
You don't know nothing about drugs?
No.
I got contacted by a guy who has been coming here and told me how it all works. What's that?
You invading my space.
We traced his license plate to a man who has listed 2511 Slevin as one of his addresses and was sent to prison after pleading guilty to cocaine trafficking. Our informant says it's worse than a crime. It's profiting off of somebody's disease. He stopped coming and stopped enabling after attending Narcotics Anonymous meetings to educate himself on what his friend is dealing with.
I always thought it was a choice, and they could quit. But after being around them for over a year, it's not a choice, it's a disease.